This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, my name is Novo Manna, and welcome to another session of the Technology Review Council. Today we have SkillNet, presented by Mike Kritzman. I've known Mike for a couple of years here and have the privilege of bringing him to one of my clients in their evaluation very, very soon. So I'm very thrilled to have you guys in the Technology Review Council see this product and give me some perhaps insight, ask Mike some, shall we say, tough questions. I have warned him that this group can be candidly honest is the way to look at it. So Mike, you are on. Please introduce yourself and then take us on a tour, please.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for making time to learn what we're doing. Nov, thank you very much for the opportunity to meet with your team today. As Nov mentioned, my name is Mike Kritzman. I'm the CEO and founder of SkillNet. This is a project that was based on some work that I'd done earlier in my career. I'll talk about that in a moment. But as I go through the presentation, please feel free to ask questions as I go. It could be easier to cover things that way than waiting till the end. And let me just do a check. So I'm not familiar with as I'd like to be. You should be seeing PowerPoint with somebody holding a phone, and I'm about to make it full screen. Tell me if that is working. We good with that?
No, I'm seeing the same screen that you had, the skill assessment and upskilling. Yeah, we're not seeing anything different, Mike.
I think based on the audio that I'm hearing, I think you might be having bandwidth issues.
Hello?
Yeah, I think, Mike, we're kind of not hearing you crisply at all, and it could be that you're having a little bit of a bandwidth problem, as Roscoe was mentioning.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's okay. Is it full screen now?
Yeah. Now we're seeing person holding a phone.
Like,
there we go.
That, so.
We're good. Okay. Go for it. All right.
Yeah. I think I'm going to take off my video. That would probably help.
Okay. Good deal.
Bear with me one more moment. I just want to get my camera turned off.
Yep, you are turned off.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Let's try that from the top. So thanks again, Noah, for setting us in motion today. As the founder and CEO, I got a unique vision on what we're trying to do with skills. Okay. Can you hear me, Nov?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Wow. Right, so I'm going to pull through the slides. My company, SkillNet, is specifically aiming at assessing skills of the workforce and providing a platform to do coaching and a skill-based, data-driven approach for performance reviews, performance enhancements, helping people do their best work. We like to call that upskilling, getting people to peak performance. Companies that are doing now mostly have done adventures with spreadsheets. That's sort of our biggest competitor in the market, is replacing a spreadsheet that is trying to track where someone's proficiency is on any given aspect. This particular one is showing a bunch of IT skills, but our system can accommodate any kind of skill or competency framework that the clients would have, and I'll talk about how we import that in a moment. There's 3 parts to SkillNet. There's skill assessment, where we take the competency framework and we ask people to rate themselves or get 360 data. We really like getting at least manager data, so 180, get managers to rate their people and use that as a basis for where someone actually is in their skills, a version of the truth. And then based on that data, we've created an automated approach to creating a upskilling agenda for that individual. So identifying where they've got skill gaps, we put together a list of resources that will help them overcome their gaps, close their gaps, and be the best they can in their job. I say there's 3 parts to our system, but there's really just those 2 that we've built. The third piece is matching up to any learning content. There's abundance of learning content out in the world today. LinkedIn Learning has a great catalog. Open Sesame, Go One, a couple of sort of widely recognized learning libraries. Companies, especially bigger ones, also have learning management systems. They've got SharePoint. Sort of one of the attributes of our approach is that we can leverage any content that they've got, like a switchboard. So we're not actually re-importing it or trying to replay it. We're pointing to it wherever it might already live. This next slide is a bit of a flow chart of a process of how we go about pulling off this assessment and an upskilling program, and I'll just talk about each of these briefly. We define the competency framework. We conduct the assessment. It feels like taking a survey. I'll show you what that experience is like. It's pretty easy. Generally takes users about 10 minutes. Same thing for managers. The managers have to do one for each of their people. So if they had 10 people times 10 minutes, it's a little bit of an investment, but boy, the payoff is big. And then from having done the assessment, the system will automate the creation of this personalized development plan we call a PDP. And we say, get alignment with your mentor on what the automation's built. So if there's any changes or improvements that you want to make, the automation is designed to create a resource agenda where the user has a gap. But sometimes people are already good at something and they want to keep getting better. So, you know, it's possible that adding things where a user has strong capabilities is a good idea, and the system doesn't automate that. You know, enhancing things that you're already good at is a manual approach. Resources can be added by either the manager or the user. So this mentor alignment, and then it accesses the skill tag library where we connect the dots, as I was talking about. And then we've got sort of this rinse and repeat, circling around skill by skill. So using sort of the skill-based learning approach, review how to get better at one area that you need to improve, move on to the next one, rinse and repeat. That is sort of the essence of our upskilling. We've got 2 other modules that I have sort of outside that circle, which is setting and managing quarterly goals and earning certifications or managing external certifications. And then there's reporting, a lot of different kinds of reports that we can do on all the skill data. Okay. The way that we create the competency frameworks is fairly straightforward. We try to look at 4 domain areas. What's it take to be good at the job? What's the business skills? What's the technology that our role requires? And then what are the professional skills or the foundational skills? Used to be called soft skills. I think it's widely recognized they're not soft. It's pretty darn important. Sometimes it's the biggest indicator of success is how well you get along with others and collaborate and things of that nature. We convert this into a spreadsheet and then we upload it into our system. This particular screenshot is showing our tree diagram where we've got departments, we've got roles within a department. Each role has got competencies and skills, and this can be easily imported and updated over time. I think I'll just leave it there. The definitions of the skill frameworks are then used for assessments. The assessments are straightforward, rate yourself 1 through 5 kind of things. We like the scale of emerging to mastery, where mastery is you could teach others. You can also add topics for discussions, conversations. You do all this on a phone. It's pretty straightforward. What we're aiming for is getting someone to a meeting like this, where they'd have done their ratings, their manager's done their ratings, and they're getting alignment, getting feedback on what they're doing right, and getting advice on areas where they need to improve. And so you can see this column for gaps in this example is showing the gap between what's the person think of themselves and what's the manager think. And so it could be that that person really is a 5, but the manager didn't see it or wasn't aware of it, or that the person was thinking they were performing better than has been observed. But either way, I think it's really critical to reconcile this stuff, and getting into the nitty-gritty skill by skill view really has enormous payback. It's very hard for managers to keep track of this stuff. Earlier when I said I was going to introduce myself, I'll just go back for a minute. I had the leadership role at Oracle for 7 years. I had a group of 30 people. At Ernst & Young, I was in charge of a group of almost 100 people. I used to use spreadsheets to try to keep track of all this because I thought my job as a manager was to help people do better at their job. And so this is my second company. When my first company got acquired, we set off to tackle this, and I'm real pleased. We've landed significant projects now with General Mills, CNA Insurance. We have about 30 customers, and a very good pipeline. Now that skills are sort of become a new form of currency for many companies, they're trying to figure out what skills do we have. It's not easy to find out. I'm real pleased to share that if you search for skill assessment or skill measurement on Google, we are on most days on the first page, and it's because of this ability to sort of simplify what's a pretty hard agenda when you're trying to do a talent inventory. I'm going to just click along here. So this skill data then feeds this automation that I was talking about called a PDP, where we sort of separate what's a person currently working on. We keep track of what they've completed, and we have an area of things that would be recommended for them based on the skill that they're trying to improve. For example, if I was trying to improve time management, it's an ongoing dilemma for me, and then something was added to the library for time management, the system would actually email me and say, something's been added related to time management. It knows what each person's working on, and that's why we call it a personalized development plan. So it reaches out through email. Netflix does something like that, and I actually modeled our approach after Netflix. Netflix knows that I like scary movies, so if a new movie's been added, I get an email and it just cues me. We're trying to make it that easy to sort of push learning content out to people instead of waiting for them to log in. And as I said, we can access any resources that that might exist out in the internet, publicly or behind a firewall. That's how it works. Netflix was a good one to model. The other one that we modeled after was YouTube. You can see here what our library looks like, where we've got the ability to put these links to videos, documents, articles, courses, books, podcasts, experts in the organization or external contractors, and there's some other ingredients we can put into this library. This is all linked to the skill frameworks that had been constructed in the first place. Just moving along, the essence of our efforts are to diagnose skill gaps and try to fix them. So in order to do that, we capture data. The data, if someone was 5 out of 5 on all their skills, they'd be at 100%. We have yet to have a customer, have anyone rated in at 100. 77 would be pretty good. And then we break it down by competency area, show progress over time, pick up the conversations. This is sort of an individual report. Um, and you know, it's an opportunity for recognizing people's improvement over time, and I think the pandemic certainly sort of heightens the need for managers to be more tuned into their people, which is a challenge on these Zoom meetings or GoToMeetings. But it's sort of the current world, and I think we're going to stay there for a while. Our business has actually picked up as a result of the distance requirements that companies are facing nowadays. Managers can look individually. As I mentioned, they can also look at their teams, sort of stack ranking or pulling. We've got a variety of reports that are available on team members. We can also aggregate data and pull data into things like you're seeing here with heat maps, bar charts that compare sort of who rated who. And this is a real interesting one, is strengths and weakness that can be filtered by manager or location. So those are the sort of typical reports. One of our insurance clients asked us to visualize this on a map. They wanted to find out where were the skilled people and filter down to them, and then be able to see where they were in the United States, because they have to ship them to various customer sites. So we were able to construct that exact report where we're looking at people like business cards, filtering down who's the right individual or people with the skills to go do a certain job, where do they live, and then move them on out. One of the other aspects of our site, because we know where your skills are today, it's much like how your GPS in your car knows where your current location is. So we've got where is the individual and their capabilities now, and we know what's the capability or competency model for future jobs. We're able to do a very data-driven approach to career pathing. So up on the top here would be potential future jobs for this IT role. And the user would click on one of these and it would create a spider chart that would identify how far away they are based on their current skills to the skills needed for that particular role. So in this example, you could see this user's pretty close to everything they need to be a .NET developer, pretty far away from being a cybersecurity expert. Looks like they're ready for data science almost as well. So again, using data to sort of connect the dots for what's the right learning is a big piece of our approach. The last thing I'll say is, this is all interesting sort of conceptually, but we're actually delving into trying to figure out how long things will take. So one of the reports that we keep track of is, what's the estimated time to complete learning resources? What's the actual time spent? What's the delta? And then on a skill by skill basis, how long did someone spend in these different areas? With that data, we'll be able to come back, and this report's not complete yet, but it's underway, is based on where you are now, how long will it take for you to be ready to be a .NET developer? And for companies interested in the cost of that, we can apply sort of a burden rate to the company for that user and actually cost out what's the cost to transform that person into that next role. And that would potentially be weighed against hiring somebody from the outside and ramping them up. This kind of sort of financial data is right at our fingertips as well. So I'm going to finish up the slides with sort of summary, capturing skill data, trying to engage managers and users in their personal development. Better skills is better performance. This idea of upskilling or reskilling is, kind of what we're really aiming at. If you do a good job at this, people stick. And we talked about career pathing. So before I jump into the system to show how some of that works, I'll just open it up if there's any questions.
So Mike, this is Nov. I'll attribute this comment to Oral, who had mentioned that using the YouTube and Netflix kind of format is a very easy perspective. It's kind of nice to show us leverage their success and incorporate that's here. I agree with her completely. It I think helps the adoption process a whole lot easier. This is very intuitive as a system to use. And if you don't mind kind of hitting on the, let's say back to the employee and that spider chart. So how deep can I go in terms of related type of things? So as you're showing, you'd mentioned that, cybersecurity is not really where they want to be because they've got a ways to go, but for data science. So how many attributes against, let's say, other positions in the organization would I see based on my skill set? In other words, are you going to guide me, or am I going to have to second guess a little bit through the organization structure where I think I would want to go? And maybe they're both sides of that coin might be just appropriate as well.
Yeah, I think it's a slippery, as a business owner myself, I think it's a bit of a slippery slope to have that door wide open. So, for example, if I was working at Allstate Insurance as a software engineer, and I looked out the window and I saw the sales guys showing up in, fancy cars, and I dream of being in sales, the company might not be interested in me changing departments completely like that. In this example, we're sort of showing an IT pathway. The short answer is through administrative controls, you can limit or open the doorway fully. And my comments about not wanting engineers to change departments, that's an administrative option that each company could decide.
Right. Right. So, and then the perspective of, we call it, the disciplinary skills that I have in a particular function, as opposed to the soft skills. So, for example, maybe I find that Nova's got some really good technical skills. He probably doesn't have quite the communication and sales drive that I'd want him as a salesperson, but maybe as a leader for a project team, because he's got good skills, relationship building, things of that nature. So how do you weight that sense, or is it just a balance across both those sets of skills? Because I think we're recognizing that we've kind of downplayed, to your point, soft skills are not that important. Now they are. They're very important, and I think we don't train for that. We don't really educate people for that, and yet that's a lacking thing. When we hear about leadership development too, I suspect your system would be able to help to guide people into leadership positions with an understanding of what they need to develop. So if you can hit both those perspectives, going to how do you weight this and what do you do for leadership would be very good.
Yeah, well, leadership skills is just another skill framework. I don't want to minimize it, but certainly, hopefully I communicated our ability to sort of model any kind of competency framework. We have done a fair amount of work with leadership development. It's a big science think tank called Battelle. They've used us for leadership development, and they just had a competency framework all about, setting goals for your team, active listening, creating charisma. They just created a framework that was specific for what they wanted out of their leadership. And then it's the same process: rating, getting rated. For most leadership positions and companies, they do some kind of a 360 already. They generally don't do it sort of at the skill by skill level that we'd promote. And usually those 360s are not linked to content. So it'll tell you you need to improve in certain areas, but it won't connect the dots to resources that'll help you do it. So those are, I think, some thoughts from the top.
I think that shows a lot about the flexibility of the framework you've just built. So that's a good thing. How about things like certifications and so on? How does that fit into the framework as well? It's not necessarily a competency, but in some cases, certifications. Let's say I'll even go down the path of a Microsoft certified person. Tracking that, requiring that in the competencies, things of that nature. Do you track that? And there we are, staring me in the face. Thank you.
No, I actually skipped this slide because I didn't want to spend too much on the slides. But I'd say we look at goals and certifications in a similar way. If you've accomplished what was required to get Microsoft or some other certification, there's a form in our site that you could fill out and enter what's the cert, what's the date that it was awarded, does it expire, and we can keep track of that. We even, like I had mentioned, we push out notifications if there was new content. We push out notifications when the renewals are coming. Oftentimes these kinds of external certs have continuing ed requirements, and you don't want to wait till the last minute to try to get that done. So it's just another form that that could be entered in our site to keep track of yet another thing that's frequently watched over in spreadsheets. I put the certifications on this goal page because we also support internal certifications. So if Chevron wanted to make a certification for their roustabouts, that they were able, you know, they've demonstrated competence to operate equipment on a rig, then you know, maybe the steps to that would be, you know, turn on the machine, move the pipes around. A manager would observe that and determine that they've proven their capability. We view those sort of steps very much in the same way that we do goals, and we can keep track of these sort of internal certifications in a similar way to keeping track of the ones I was talking about that are external. Thanks for asking, Nov.
Yeah, no problem. I kind of thought that was sitting there, and I don't remember seeing it, but let me ask. Any other questions from the audience before we go to the demo?
I got a question, Nov.
Oh, please do.
Yeah, it's Bruce. Mike, what happens if, can you ask somebody, let's say I have an employee and I feel the best way to get them up to speed on something new is to give them a stretch assignment. With that, maybe I can monitor informally or perhaps formally through your system. Can you accommodate that?
You would give them what kind of assignment?
A stretch assignment. So say I need to get better financials, and one of the ways I may do that is to get some more responsibility in my own organization or shadow somebody in another organization, do some of their tasks, et cetera, as a way to come up to speed in my organization on that kind of capability. Is that something? Can you only do online programs from vendors? Is that, I'm just trying to understand.
No, you can absolutely link, you know, so if you were going to do shadowing, for example, then I would say, you know, connecting the dots, we would fill out the format for an expert. And I'm going to jump into the system in a moment, and I'll show you sort of how you would connect those dots. But sure, if it was an online course, I think that's what you meant by a vendor, you know, some external content. Yeah. If it was a, you know, someone on your team, you know, the example I give a lot of times are using Excel pivot tables. Everybody knows how to use Excel to some degree. Pivot tables are a little tricky. Maybe there's somebody who's a whiz at pivot tables. Have him show you how, and then go ahead and up your rating on doing pivot tables if that was important for your job.
Yes,
so you could definitely.
Yes, I don't think there's any limitation on the content delivery through your platform. In other words, you can generate your own and put it within the same libraries as you would anyone else's vendor stuff.
Yeah, but I think that's a terrific question because, you know, people, we're trying to capture observed and demonstrated competence. Proficiency, you might know what to do, but not do it. Lots of examples of that, like my golf game. But the fact is, if you know, the proof of knowing how to do something is doing it, and demonstrating that proficiency where others can see it is sort of unquestionable. And helping people get experiences on the job that will build that proficiency, we absolutely want to support that. Those kinds of informal learning opportunities as well. So thanks for bringing that up.
Well, so Mike, if you want to go into the demo, I'm going to hold on a couple of my questions here. They're more generalized, so let's jump in the demo. In fact, if you want to kind of take what Bruce was saying and maybe extend upon that, that'd be maybe a great place to start. Unless you want to take us from the basics, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, good idea. Good idea. That's exactly what I was going to do. And so many of the slides in that deck were just screenshots. I'm actually in our library now, And I'll just do a quick nickel tour. Up here would be my picture. That's actually one of the guys that works for me. If I wanted to do my own ratings, I'd click here. This is a demo site that we've put together that I use a lot. So there's 77 things for me to do. You click on that and see what they are. I can do open search. There's a video library for how to do things if I forgot. This is generally the customer's logo. This would be what the customer wants to say about the use of this site. This is a little quick link. If I wanted to assign something to someone like, work with Steve in accounting on pivot tables, if I wanted to run an assessment, or if I wanted to add resources into the library. On this left nav, we've got sort of page by page navigation. And you can see in this site, we've got sort of things in full bloom. I've got everything turned on. But for some of our customers, they might want to do a few things at first and add more later, or maybe not ever do them all. And all of this can be easily turned on or off. It's super configurable. This little 3 stripes, I think many of us are used to this as being a way to navigate. It is for us too. It's a little duplicative right now that those 3 stripes really is the same page as here. I used to not have the left nav being displayed, but then I had some customers as we broadened our user base into some manufacturing work, and not to say anything about people in manufacturing, but they didn't know to look under here, so we added this over here. I just have them both. So anyway, that's how you navigate around. I'm on the library page right now, and you can see I've got a collection of resources in here, 17 of them. As I mentioned in the conversation, we're all about personal development. Again, I'm logged in as this guy, so this is what I'm doing. This is my current personal development plan, has 11 items in it, and I've completed 10 items. If I wanted to go back and do a refresher, and the system's got a couple of things recommended for me based on what I'm working on. If I go back to the entirety, I can then filter things by what's newest. If I just feel like watching videos or trying to find experts, things like that. If I wanted to look skill by skill, this is one of the areas that I hope will really try to hit the point. So if I was working on listening and I just wanted to browse the library for things to help me be a better listener, I could just click on that, and these are the resources that have been tagged for listening. Let's just go with that example and say, in your company, you're getting complaints that managers aren't doing a good job listening, but there's one manager who stands out. He does a fantastic job with his people and everybody loves working for him. Let's put him as an expert for this concept of listening. And so all I'd have to do is list his name, Bill Jones. And I think it's, we've got a level, it's not really relevant for people, but let's just say sitting down with Bill and talking about this as a medium topic, you should spend 15 minutes. And his expertise is listening. Here's his email, here's his phone. You go get a thumbnail of his picture or, an ear or something that would be relevant. And then here's his LinkedIn. But most importantly, the sort of secret sauce, what powers this personalized development engine is the skill tagging. So in here, I would say this is a resource that's been set aside for listening, and I could make this private. I could have this sort of be a private thing because I wasn't ready to share it because maybe I haven't talked to Bill yet and asked him if it's okay to have him mentor others. But if it was ready to go, I just save it and it would get into the site. Now, I want to just expand on this point, but before I do, I want to go back to, I think, that question about, can we use this to shadow people? How'd I do at answering that question? No, I don't want to overkill it, but I want to make sure I got it because I really thought it was a great question.
I think you did a pretty good job, but then let me insert something here that might very well be pertinent in the sense that you can accommodate, I suspect, both interns and contingent workforce in your platform. I may not in the HCM system or that I'm using, but let's say I want to put my whole workforce through this process, including interns and that. Would that be relevant to this? In other words, shadowing and having a contingent worker follow a project team group or member for a week or something like that?
Yeah, you could. You know, our customers decide what users they want to put into the system. We're a user-based approach, and we have done different fee structures for staff than contractors. Love the idea of having interns get mentored or shadow around, and so it's a great use case. Thanks, Nov. Yep. Okay, well, let's just say, for example, that, you know, Bill was one way to learn about listening. I was looking around YouTube and I found a video about listening. You can get the embed code. You can see it's still tagged for that same skill. I just want to click through briefly here. If there is a document, I just go add the document. If there was a link, an article on ways to listen better, I just put the link in. There was a course. If it was in LinkedIn, sometimes there's a cost. Maybe the company has a subscription. A book on these topics. We actually have the link right to Amazon. Podcasts are making a comeback. I personally like podcasts. You can listen to them when you're exercising or doing other things. I was going to say driving, but we don't drive that much as we used to before the pandemic. Again, you can either do it as a link or an embed code. We talked about experts. Anyway, we're trying to provide a very easy, quick way to tag resources, link them, and bring them to people. So, you know, the skill areas that your company depends on are getting sort of fresh and useful resources. The nice thing about this approach too is we can open it up. There's an admin control that says anybody can add things to the library or only people with authorization can. If you had like a 50-person sales force, you could say everybody put a book in there that helped in your career. And so, you know, in the minute it takes for them to enter the data about the book, you'd have 50 books, and your library gets filled out, kind of crowdsourcing learning content instead of
Hey,
waiting.
Mike, I got another question.
Sure.
Okay, so with the experts, I like that. That's a great idea. I'm assuming that as a precondition, the organization needs to identify who those experts are.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, I can't go in and put Nov in as an expert in something unless Nov knows I'm coming at him for that expertise. Right. Is that the correct way to think about it?
Absolutely. Right.
Okay.
So my next question is, does that show up on my skills as being an expert? Are you backtracking the fact that I've been identified one way? I would want to have that counted for, if you will, in my profile.
So there's sort of two questions there. Yeah. One is, what's the overall rating of proficiency to be considered an expert on anything? I think that's going to vary company to company. Right. I generally would say if your skill level at your job is greater than 80%, you're up there. That would be, you know, 4 out of 4 on all the topics related to your role. CNA Insurance is actually working with us now to do expert designations. They actually want to start to identify who are their subject matter experts out in the company on various things, and we're adding the sort of designation that shows up next to their profile so that they, you know, it's easy to spot who the experts are, and we'll actually add that expert as a pin in that map that I showed before. It's an interesting concept. I think you just have to manage it, and if you know, and sort of, what am I trying to say? Yeah. Not overwhelm someone with requests to get help from them so much that it interferes with their ability to do their day job.
Right.
Yeah.
But what strikes me is that as much as it might be an ego to have a badge and all that stuff, if I were the CEO looking down and say, you know, we want to do some real interesting product renovation to really be a leading insurance company, let's say.
Mhm.
And I want to go find some experts on blah, blah, blah. Now,
Mhm.
those managers that are in charge of those kind of insurance products may be the right ones, but they're managing a business, but they may not be the subject matter experts. And I want to go to the subject matter. I put a small team together where you get innovation because that subject matters. People come together and they just think it through. And so
Yeah.
that's, to me, that's something that, you know, is kind of a byproduct of this. But being able to understand my workforce and their strengths is something that I think we don't leverage very well. But we don't have a lot of tools like this either.
Yeah.
In fact, we
Right.
only have this tool, right?
We
There are
do
no other
have some,
tools other than this one, but no.
we like to think we're better, but there's a few, and then of course there's spreadsheets, and I'm not kidding. Almost every company that has signed up with us tried to do this stuff on spreadsheets before and got frustrated with it. But I do think we can help identify who's got top ratings in any competency area that you can imagine, collect that data, and what the company wants to do about it, how they want to leverage that, how they want to cross-pollinate. That's all sort of up to them. We've got a handy system to figure out who's expert at what, but you know, their mileage will vary based on what they do about it. Yeah. Let me just go ahead and dive in a little bit into the live system now. This is a demo site that I put together for project managers. I like to demo this because most people have some understanding of what it takes to be a project manager. This is that library part of the system where we've constructed the competency framework. And you can see I've got 3 departments listed here. The project manager we're looking at is going to be an IT role. We've also got cloud developers in here, but we've got 2 competency groups for being a project manager. There's project manager stuff and being a good leader. If we open up any of these, we'll then reveal what's it mean to be a good leader. You know, you've got to have communication skills, listening and whatnot. To be a good project manager, you've got to initiate, plan, execute, monitor, and close projects that you're working on. And then what's the skills for any of that? If you wanted to add a skill or save these things as templates and, you know, have a junior project manager and a senior project manager, it's kind of the same thing with different proficiency targets. There's all kinds of ways that we can maneuver around these building blocks like Legos to reconstruct and construct different positions. As I mentioned, we upload them from spreadsheets. That's kind of handy since most of our prospects have tried to do this on spreadsheets, and we just have this upload taxonomy. I'm going to be a little bold and say, if a client had some idea, a client or a prospect, it's an invitation to any of you. If you had a framework that you wanted to go collect some data on, we can take your spreadsheet, take the ideas, and put it into an assessment that we could send out the next day. The assessments get sent out through email. Somebody would click on it, rate themselves, managers could rate their people, and get back and have that all pulled together like next day service. It's really easy for us to do. And then you can track the data over time and do things about it. I want to just use this initiate projects. Let's go into that for a minute. So now here's the front end of the system. It's the same exact topics that we had in the back end I was just showing you. And now you can see what's that person's self-rating, what's the expected proficiency target for their level, and what's the gap between where are they against the target. And the gap could be a positive, like this guy's better than target, or it could be a negative where they're not as good as expected. If we want to get into the nitty gritty, each particular skill, and then you can see what the ratings are. Here we've got target ratings. We also can look at manager ratings. I talked about that, and just navigating around, you know, for one-on-one meetings. This is the kind of stuff that I'm proud of automating, because I used to use spreadsheets on this, and most of the people we talk to are struggling to try to find a way to do it, or it's just too hard. They don't even try. But if you want to really get into helping someone get better at some various parts of the job. The first part is to know what you're working with and then take action. Discussion topics are all easy to navigate, suggestions on things people can do. And these are audit trails, just a demo site, but you can see it was dated and you just scroll down for more that was put in. So that's what we're doing in terms of skills. I want to jump to the topic of this personalized development, because this is sort of like you go to the doctor and they do labs on you and you've got high cholesterol. All right, well, I don't want that. How do I fix it? That's what we're using the PDP for. So let's go to that. So now you can see, here's the list of skills that this person is currently working on improving. Let's just pick on management for a minute. They want to be able to do a better job building and maintaining project teams. There's 3 resources that have been identified for that. There's one that's been identified for leading change. And here's the individual resources. You can see how long they would take. And then if I click on one of these, it'll open up and display what are the steps that are associated with getting that done. Once they complete it, they'd say, how long did they spend on it? What date did they finish it? And then mark it as done, and that's how the completion bar moves along. If they wanted to go and preview one of these, they can do it right here from the site. Let's just go ahead and take a look at that. And this is going to bring up a video, I think. These videos are streaming from wherever it is coming from. And I think, we were experiencing a little bit of lag before with GoToMeeting. This is usually pretty, like instant. So I think maybe my computer is just taxed, I'm not sure. But these pop up pretty quickly. And the user then could say, boy, this is a great resource, mark it as completed, and then move on. And then as they finish things, they move from their current list over to their completed list, where we keep track of what have they gotten done, and then sort of this part of the site that I just love is that recommended. What's been added to the library that's recommended for you. It's now going and taking a look in the library to find, based on your skill gaps and things that you've done before, what are some of the resources that are relevant to help you on your transformation from where you are to being better at your role. I'd also talked about how you could add things, like if you're already good and it wasn't on your personal development plan, you could go browsing for things. So you just click on add to the PDP. You can look in the library to find things that are already in there, or you could go create new resources if there wasn't something. This is going to let me browse the library, and I could look using that skill framework and so on. We're running a little bit towards the end. I don't want to run out of time. Hopefully this gave you guys some idea of what we're doing for assessing skills and helping to develop them on a personalized basis. Nova, are you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that, and I appreciate you keeping an eye on the time too, because I think we could sit here all day. You showed me last time, and I think it'd be important to maybe for the audience to see this, the comparison of 2 individuals in terms of their skill levels as you're trying to maybe make a choice between promoting one of 2 individuals.
Yep. Thank you. Let me just make a couple of points. I think somewhere along the conversation there was a question about, I'm an admin now. I'm logged in as an admin. If I wasn't an admin, I wouldn't have access to this. Within here, I can change the competency models. We looked at that. I can do weighting. I can set up other managers, observing managers, and set up the proficiency targets. There's a variety of capabilities. I think I thought that I had the reports tab open, and there it is. This is the report that you were talking about, Nov. Mm-hmm. So I would look at the gaps.
And I should
And
bring that
now,
up. I'll make a quick note to Paul's point about this. He said he likes the manager rating, and the self-assessment tends to be a little biased and highly subjective. The more 360 data points, the more objective and the proper baseline. So, in a sense, this idea of both the manager and maybe other subjective or objective points coming in to do that gap analysis is pretty important stuff. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about your thoughts about where that's going over time.
Yeah, well, managers can be biased too. I think, it's just a trick. And in full transparency, we're just doing our best to try to capture the truth. Where is somebody actually at? I've talked to some chief learning officers that feel the only way to really get the truth is to test everybody on everything. I actually know for a fact that somebody might do well on a test, but not demonstrate that behavior in their job. So it's hard to know. We landed on this observed behavior from managers as sort of the high ground on this. That's why we include it here in this rating target option. But we also can do 360 stuff, and I think we're just trying to get to what is really true, and then help people dial in an agenda like the GPS. Where are you now? What are the things that you need to do to be your best version? Yeah.
Great.
So this is that side-by-side report, and I don't know if you noticed while I was clicking around, I just happened to go to Abigail and Beth. One of our prospects asked us, could we do a comparative between where this person is against the others? Right now, we're just sort of presenting what each of them are individually, but I think it's something we're going to add the next couple of weeks as a side-by-side where we say, who's the stronger candidate in this different skill matrix? And that'd be pretty easy to do.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice. Let's open up for questions or feedback to Mike as we're kind of drawing to the edge of the hour here. Anyone want to give comment? Feel free to open up and ask.
Sure, I'll jump in. No, Mike, Steve Garrett, how are you?
Hey, Steve.
Was able to free up and come to this. So I'm just curious how you feel either the design of this, the usage by clients, or any of the particular success factors may have been changing due to COVID in the last few months.
Well, that's a timely question, huh?
Yeah.
There is definitely a uptick in our, like on our website, we've got a contact us or request a demo. And I'm thrilled to say that we've been getting more visitors that want demos than ever. And I attribute it to the challenges that companies are facing with not being able to see people in person. One of our clients, and I'll just leave this as a I guess something. If you're interested, please get in touch with me. I don't have time to talk about it now, but one of our customers had us build a safety, like how to return to work safely, where we send out, instead of a skill assessment, a little assessment about, do you have a sore throat? Can you smell things? Have you been exposed? Do you have a headache, stomach ache, any of the symptoms? And then if you have any of those, don't come into work. You'd think people would have enough common sense for that, but it's sort of a safety measure. And so we actually have been a little opportunistic with the help of a paying customer to go ahead and build out a safety capability. It's what we call safe return. I've got it here, but I think back to our main system, the skill tracking and whatnot, it's hard to do when you're not meeting with your people in person as much. And so I think that's driving a lot of our incoming leads.
Right.
Thanks, Steve.
Mike, you've got a question here from Meredith, or Melissa, I'm sorry. Is SkillNet a standalone system or an integratable one? And I think if you would talk about the platform, how do you get your information in and possibly back to, let's say, an HCM system?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that. Most of our bigger clients seem to have bought Workday, and a lot of them have Cornerstone. Those are sort of the two other systems that we're primarily interfacing with. The HCM for really what I call the roster, so who works for who, who's been hired, who's no longer with the company, so we can integrate so that users can sort of come in and out of the system automatically. And then the LMS for integrating to which course has someone taken, and if they completed a course in Cornerstone, it'll automatically mark it as completed in SkillNet, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
I would love to get into a project where we use skill data to inform comp, and like how much have you improved in your skills is something that people get bonused on. So I'd put a bounty out. We'll do any kind of a deal to get that project started. I can't wait for that one.
Good.
Thanks.
You have another question here from Paul about if you could share how the breakout of the competency framework looks. Doesn't need necessarily a demo, but just a quick bring that back up for the competency.
Are we talking about this?
I think so, Paul. Is that correct? What you're looking for?
Yes, that's exactly what I was looking for. Thanks, Nov. I just wanted to. I like the breakout of the personal attributes, and then you got the communication, and I would love to see a visual that also shows you the leadership, the management, all those broken out, to see
How
if
deep it goes. Yeah.
Well, here's what I hope it doesn't sound like I'm bragging, but like for CNA Insurance, they have 200 different skills. It's one of the reasons there are some other, and thanks for saying that, No, there's some other companies that do this stuff. I don't think anybody can go as deeply as us or link learning as well as we do.
Right.
And Paul, if you had something in mind, it could, go as deep as you want. All of this is configured by client. So while we've got a library of some 200 different jobs from the work we've done with different clients, I generally start with what the client has instead of making them adapt to what our model is. So it can really be whatever you imagine.
Thank
Any
you.
other feedback, questions for Mike? Well, we are at the hour. Mike, I have to say again, as always, we saw you probably about almost a year ago. You've made some phenomenal progress. You've got some great clients, some named clients out there. I'm hoping that you become, or one of my clients become one of your clients. To me, this continues to be a great platform, and I think what you continue to do in extending it is also very meaningful. So, thank you again all for joining us as well. We're going to skip next week, so please feel free to schedule lunch or whatever happens in this hour for you next Thursday. But we'll be back on schedule this week after. So, all right, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining. Mike, thank you very much for your time as well. And we'll see you
My
soon.
pleasure. Thank you, Nov.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.